Buongiorno, I'm Jim Campanini, and welcome to the Grapefully Yours Wine Podcast, coming to you from the gorgeous downtown studios of InsideLowell.com. Today, we have with us a special guest, but first, my producer, Teddy Panos, the owner of InsideLowell.com, and we have sitting in the corner the wine butler, Mike Pigeon. Mike's off camera, but it's hard to keep him off camera. He's got such a he's got a radio face, I guess. I don't know, but anyway, we have with us today a special guest, Joanne Ross from J. Ross Wines. Joanne is my wine mentor. Everything that I've learned about wine came from Joanne, and she has a great connection to Lowell. But, she's got so many certifications and wine diplomas. If I went into everything, okay, it would take half the show. But let me tell you, she's an instructor, a certified instructor in Italian wines, French wines. I took both her classes. They changed my life, okay, at the Wine Scholar Guild, which was down in Boston, led to my certification in Italian wines. She was a great inspiration because I did it, later in my life before I retired from the Sun as an editor. But the passion and it just revived everything. Visiting Italy, going to all wine. You hear Joanne speak and tell about her travels and stuff that just inspires you. And now she just completed her level 4 at the Boston University with Bill Nestor. That's the Elizabeth Bishop wine program. Just tell us a little about what that means, a level 4, and how much you have to put into that.
Well, the course load, Jim, there are 4 courses. I kind of jumped ship at level 3, and I never completed level 4 because I heard it was really hard with a lot of reading and a lot of essays and a lot of tastings. So a sample essay question would be Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. We know it's popular. Why is it popular? And you have to go back and research the articles and look into the past. How did it become popular? So those questions are very compelling for
Mike
us
and I
wine
would just
people.
drink it. We just drink it and say, yeah.
But you want to know, why is it popular?
Yeah.
Will it continue in its popularity? So these are all marketing-based wine sales questions, which always interest me.
Well, so Joanne, she has her own company, J. Ross Wines, education, but also marketing. So she's done a lot of marketing projects and instructing projects for Bordeaux, the Languedoc, French wines.
Loire.
Yes, the Loire. Rhone wines. So if you ever see her name associated with a wine tasting, you want to go. You want to see it because you'll definitely. She's not only accessible, but she's patient, she's kind, and she's generous with her time. Let me tell you. So, but let's talk about a little about the Lowell connection before we get into some of your recent things. Joanne is teaching at the Commonwealth Wine School, and we'll talk a little about that because that's the major wine school in Massachusetts. Okay, but first, Joanne's history with Lowell is really quite interesting. She was a speech pathologist, worked for the old St. John's church, St. John's Medical Center and Hospital, and then became Saints, and she worked there for 10 years. Why don't you tell us a little?
Well, actually, I started working at St. John's in 1976.
Wow.
I also worked for the Lowell Visiting Nurses. In 1976, I started that too, and that was the old facility. I believe it was on Middlesex Street.
Yes,
the old facility there.
Way up, yeah.
Okay, and I was there for years. I think I stayed at both situations up until the mid-90s.
Wow.
But I went through the changes with Saints and Lowell General and St. Joseph's.
You bought a condo
I
in
bought a
Lowell?
condo. I know
She's
every
a
name.
Highlands girl.
Yep, Stephen Street. And I know every neighborhood because of my visiting nurse's experience. I would drive around with my map.
In Lowell plays a big part in her life because living in Lowell drove her to start drinking wine and studying. No, that's a joke. So talk about that little transformation and you know, how you started getting involved with your passion.
Well, you and I talked about that earlier. When I was 25, newly drinking, I had dinner at my Aunt B's house.
There's always an Aunt B.
Aunt B. And we sat out back in a pergola-like situation, and they brought out a bottle of Almaden White Mountain Chablis. And it was sitting on the table with the candles, and wine represented the good life to me. It always represented just a wonderful time with people. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just was that communal experience. I always loved drinking it. I took every course you could take at Boston Center for Adult Education, Cambridge Center for Adult Education, and I was hooked. I loved learning about it. It's like an onion. You could peel, you know that. You could peel these layers and never reach the inside. In fact, I was telling you, tomorrow I'm off to New York to go to the Volcanic Wine Conference for wines grown on volcanic soils like Etna or Santorini or Vesuvius. Yeah. So one is a constant student of wine. And as people always say to me, oh, do you want to be a sommelier? And I say, no, I teach the sommeliers.
You took a big risk. Oh. You were a woman. You were a woman in a man's world. Now, women now are dominating wine. From winemakers, they're making great wines. But even in the class system in France and Italy, you didn't turn over a winery to a woman. So you took a risk. You had a career, successful career, and then you said, gee, you still, there must have been ebbs and flows, but you were driven. You knew what you wanted to do.
I walked into a wine shop in Boston in the early 2000s, and there was a woman there pouring the wine and talking about the wine, and she had little treats, and I thought, I want to do that. I don't want to carry the wine on my back. I don't want to grow it. I don't want to make it. You need a wine butler. I don't want to grow it. I don't want to make it. I don't want to distribute it. I want to teach about it. So I love working in retail. That's where I really learned about wine. At my first job, I made $9 an hour at Brookline Liquor Mart. And but working in retail is just so much fun and so rewarding. So that's where I really learned the basics of how to talk to people about wine. People would come in with recipe books. What should I have with that? And that was a pleasure. And then they'd come back and they say how good it was.
So when I remember speaking to Joanne, I first met her through mutual friends in Lowell. She was at a party and everything, and then I decided to take the plunge. I remember I did the French wines first, which, you know, I didn't understand anything about the French language or the culture, and I learned an awful lot. I missed my exam mark by 3 points. But remember I gave the wrong answers and everything else. But anyway, it was fun because, I mean, these classes, not only you have to do a lot of work, but they're gratifying because you taste the wines. And Joanne she's a student teacher first. Students come first, and she used to make sure everything was comfortable for us, no
everything
pressure. Because people, there were chefs in that class from legal seafood. They weren't going for their certification, but they wanted to learn how to pair foods and stuff. And it was just exciting to see these people ask questions. And Joanne wasn't this type. If she didn't know the answer to it, she says, I'll get back to you. And, you know, it's not like these people who bloviate and stuff. And it was fantastic. And even though I didn't pass that exam, I said, you know, I know Italian.
But you passed the harder one.
I passed the harder one, yes.
The Italian Wine School.
Italian Wine School, which was 2 parts, 2 years. But I loved it when it moved to La Mora. in Brooklyn.
Oh my gosh, we had so
we had him in
much
the
fun.
Lamora
And we all
restaurant.
brought food in.
Yes.
And we brought our own glasses. We bussed our own stuff.
And
That was so much fun.
And you talk about Italian wines, Brunello, Barolo. They didn't skimp, like say, oh, you're going to just taste the Chianti. We had these fascinating wines, and even from these hard to get winemakers, it was so thrilling.
Yeah, it was.
And the
Yes.
people in the class. This is the other thing about wine, and I want Joanne to talk about this. You know, people come from all walks of life, and they do this for different reasons. Like, not everybody is going to become a wine scholar. They want to learn. They're curious. They want how to pair it. But it was interesting to talk about these people. They were working people, but they wanted to understand a little bit wine. When they went to a restaurant, how do I order the wine, or talk to a sommelier, you know? And it was so enriching in so many
Thank
on so
you.
many levels.
It's just, I'm constantly learning, and we're constantly looking up stuff. If you're one who likes to look up stuff, one thing about being a wine educator, which I love, regions of wine have contacted me, like you say, Bordeaux, you talk about Rhone. They've contacted me to run marketing educational initiatives. So I teach staff about Rhone wines. I teach the wait staff about Rhone wines, for example. I'd have tastings in stores, and I'd call it an edu-tasting. So you're sitting there for 5 minutes, and I'm going to do a quick Rhone analysis. And it's so gratifying to see sales go up. So I've embraced the marketing piece because some of these regions, they are kind of like the wines your grandparents drank, and they've got down in their cellars. But we need to have wine embraced by a whole new generation who have different ways of looking at wine, looking at labels, looking at ease of drinking, looking at fun, looking at price. So wine needs to shift in its marketing to embrace these younger generations.
So when people ask you that to suggest a bottle of wine for them, do you go for that sweet spot? The $15 to $25 to $40 bottle of wine? Because I know some friends of mine at the golf club, they think they got to spend $80 to $120 a bottle, and I just shake my head. I hear them talking about going to Davio's and putting down $200 for a bottle of wine, which to me is a nice lobster dinner.
I know. or a pair of shoes for me. But wine, you want to have something that pleases a crowd. Remember I said the good life. Wine represents, and it's got to be all encompassing. And these days you've got all of these wonderful, you talked about women and men, and this is, by the way, Bordeaux's big message, that they've got these young people, both men and women, who have been well-traveled, they've had tremendous learning opportunities, and they come back to Bordeaux with a very small property that might be 2 acres. And they're producing beautiful wines that they sell for $20 a bottle.
Yes, yeah.
They're delicious. And the world of wine is changing. Yes, there are many expensive, sellerable bottles, but we want to appeal. Wine should appeal to everybody. It can be that kind of a product, but it can also be the good life at $20 a bottle.
I like that. I like that advice. So we're going to talk a little briefly about the Commonwealth Wine School, which Joanne is an instructor. Right now you're doing Italian wines.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so tell us a little about Commonwealth Wine School, where it is, and what would people pay for your class, if they wanted to take it. And you have single classes too,
Yes,
right? They don't
yes.
have to take the whole program or whatever. So here's the Commonwealth School. It's located at Harvard Square, right?
Yes, in the garage building. Excuse me. Well, I always felt that what the greater Boston area, there were schools of wine. There's a couple I could talk about. But what the Boston area really needed was a brick and mortar wine school where you can be a student of wine at any level. You could be somebody who just enjoys a glass of red and wants to learn a little bit more and takes a Wine 101 class for 2 hours to learn the major grapes and just how to taste wine. It's not all this voodoo. It's a multi-sensory experience. Learning how to taste it, learning how to pair it with food, or you can go all the way up.
So they do that for Italian, French wines?
Yes. California wines, Croatian wines.
That's pretty good.
Georgian wines, wines from the Finger Lakes. So there are one-off classes where you can, in a 2-hour stretch, learn a nice little pocketbook full of wines. You can also go all the way up to somebody who wants to truly immerse in the wine education. So there's the Wine Scholar Guild, there's the WSET programs. I'm spacing out on what that acronym is. All kinds of specialty professional programs.
Wine and Spirits Education Trust.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah. So you could go at all levels and become a student of wine. And we see these same students on this educational path. And it's really lovely to see
young and old.
Young and old, all ages. A lot of young people who want to be in the wine industry and want to learn about it from that angle. A lot of second careers like me, too.
Yeah. So let's focus on the Italian 101 class. Okay, the 2-hour class. What would take place in that class, and what type of wines would you?
Okay, so I just gave one recently called Classic Wines of Tuscany. Okay, it was a 2-hour class. We had Vermentino, which is the new darling of Tuscany. Yeah. We had Vernaccia di San Gimignano. San Gimignano, we know, beautiful white and ancient grape Vernaccia. Then we had Chianti Classico. Now, Chianti and Chianti Classico are different.
Yes.
Chianti Classico, and they can't leave the class unless they know the difference. Chianti Classico is the small region between Florence and Siena, but Chianti covers this huge area. So we cover Chianti Classico, which are all the Sangiovese grapes, Brunello di Montalcino. Brunello is a clone of Sangiovese. And then we also cover Montepulciano.
Oh, one of my favorites.
Montepulciano, which is the area, not the grape. The area still produces a grape from Sangiovese too. Yes. So we taste all these different Sangioveses, and we end up with the wonderful Vinsanto and the Biscotti.
Oh,
so that
Vinsanto's a nice sweet wine, dessert wine.
It's a little bit of a travelogue. We show pictures of Pisa, pictures of Florence, pictures of Siena. So this is a basic 2-hour class. I'm giving another one on Piemonte, the middle of July. But the one I really love, it's called Italian Wine Essentials. I'll be doing that in the fall. It's 3 weeks, 3 hours per session. It's 39 of Italy's classic wines and learning about those. We don't have 39 wines, but you'll learn about all of them. You'll learn how to go shopping for them. So this is, once you've taken some one-offs and you adore Italy, and you are a consumer of Italian wine, this is the class.
So to take that class, the essentials, so if I got to start saving my pennies right now, how much would that cost for over 3 weeks? You do it, same day over 3 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right. Don't quote me on this. I believe it's $425.
That's
you
a steal.
Get 5 wines per class. Because there is, and we try to stick to the classic grapes that are introduced. So you get 15 plus wines. We always bring
Barolo,
probably. Probably have a Barolo. Probably have a something with Nebbiolo, which is from Piemonte. We touch the Dolomite.
Amarone?
We could do Amarone. We could do Amarone. So we'll do not only Amarone, which is the Corvina grape, plus a couple of other grapes.
Aglianico?
Ionico from the south. So we cover Amarone, we cover
volcanic wines.
Yes, volcanic wines. We'll cover Ionico. We'll cover the wines of Campania. We cover the wines of Sicily. So they are the classic 39 most popular Italian wines.
I remember in my Italian wine class, what hooked me when Joanne told me the story about this great wine from Campania, Lacrima di Cristi, the tears of Christ. My eyes were welling, and I couldn't wait to taste this wine, red and white. We had it at the class in Florida. I said, I had to go buy 6 bottles, give it all to my friends for Easter, and tell them the story.
And
Where
the story of the tears, and how the tears flowed into the Mediterranean. It's these.
Great stories.
Now we've got the wine essentials.
Every wine has a story.
I know, and every wine has a story, and especially Italian wines. But you took the next level up, the Italian wine scholar, which is 2 parts. So you are the.
That was one of my greatest days of my life when I got the paper came and said that I got an 88. I graduated with honors. I worked hard, you know.
This is not for the weak.
No.
It is a daunting experience, but yet the material sticks.
Yeah. And yet you are also an expert in champagne. Right?
I love champagne. I've been to champagne and blah 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 blah, and yes.
You love champagne.
Well, it's funny. When I first started my drinking of wine, I started with red. I only drank red. It was $6 a bottle, 12% alcohol or more, and it was red. Wow. And my first class that I taught was called I Only Drink Red, and I'd sneak a bottle of white wine. I never liked bubbles too much. Now it is my champagne. I do it every day if it weren't 40 plus a bottle. But there are good substitutes.
So while I've got a little surprise here. I want to show you something, and then but just gives if someone is watching the show out there and just wants to learn a little about Italian wines, never even had an Italian wine, what 2 wines would you pick out for them to try just to see if they wanted to get started, just to see if they liked the grape, the wines? What would they be?
So my first one, I'm going to do a white and I'm not even going to look. I'm going to do a white, let's see, for the red, I definitely would do a real Chianti Classico with the black rooster on it. Mm-hmm. It'll set you back maybe about $25 to $35 a bottle. So a real Chianti Classico. Then for a white, I would do a Soave, Soave. Piropan Soave.
Yes.
Well,
you can
Soave.
You can get the Classico for about $22, $24.
Yes.
Sometimes at the Wine Connection they have them even cheaper up there, but the Classico is pretty.
Well, we all know, you and I know Soave from the Bola days. Remember?
Yeah, yes. It's come a long way since then.
It is delicious. And boy, a piece of fish with a little bit of butter and olive oil on it and lemon juice and a glass of Soave and the acid in the Soave, the lovely finish on it, really cuts right through that butter on that fish.
Yeah. And you know what I've been drinking a lot? Grillo.
Grillo from Sicily.
Yes, Sicily.
I love it.
And talk about that. And Pecorino.
Pecorino is the new darling grape of the Abruzzo region and the Marche region. Pecorino, named for the sheep. Pecora is sheep.
Yeah, so very good.
Yeah.
So now, tell us a little about your next adventure, the wines, the volcanic wines.
Well, I got 2 big adventures coming up.
Okay.
Adventure number 1, tomorrow in New York City on the summer solstice, there's going to be the International Volcanic Wines Conference. These are wines grown on volcanic soils. And I used to drink a Soave and say, wow, it's lemony and salty and a little gritty, and it's so good with food. And then I started trying other volcanic wines, and they all had that characteristic. So their seminars, the man who wrote the book, John Szabo,
Yeah.
organized the whole thing. So, and then my next adventure, next week I'm off to recertify as a Bordeaux wine educator. Not just certify, recertify. If you've all never been to Bordeaux, you need to go there, skip Paris, go right to Bordeaux.
Oh, we had a fascinating trip there. Mary Lee and I went. It was just so. And bought the Bordeaux Museum.
And the Opera House,
Opera House
the
was just
Wine
fantastic.
Museum. And
I thought I'd never make it to Chateau Margaux. Of course, you
know.
couldn't go inside, but you could stay outside. It was, but across the street was the little vineyard with all the stones. And,
I know.
And when you see it yourself, when Joanne taught the class, she says the soils, the vines grow in the stones, and I'm saying, what is she talking about? And then when you see it,
and there it is, the gravel stone.
the gravel stones.
In this part of Bordeaux, Cabernet Sauvignon is king, and Cabernet Sauvignon loves gravel soils. So
And then Saint Emilion, you told me about the limestone. The vines
Yeah.
grow out of the limestone. I said, what vines are going to grow? You see it for yourself. It's unbelievable.
and the Saint-Emilion is the most charming village
Yes,
with
beautiful.
macaron shops all over the place. And the soils there, like you said, are limestone and clay. And Merlot is the grape of that.
Merlot.
Not the Merlot that they hated in Sideways. This is velvety and rich and smooth. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Saint-Emilion, right back.
So, have you ever heard of this? Carlo Farini.
Oh my gosh, Norello Mascalese.
Now, this is an interesting thing because Carlo Farini is he's been a 3-time Italian winemaker of the year, Gambero Rosso. Okay, he's won it more times than anybody else. He's about 65 years old. He's given a lot of his he still does his experimentations, but his daughter Bianca is now helping him. He made his bones up in Tuscany and Trentino. He started with 5 hectares of a vineyard in Montalcino, and he developed the Giotto Brunello di Montalcino, which was the first 100-point scoring wine.
Wow.
Okay, Brunello. It was in 2004. Well, he started a project in 2012 because he's a consultant all over the place in Sicily. He went there working for the Dalmarita family, which is big.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But he saw the potential around Etna. Now, the interesting thing here with Norello Mascalese, this is like the noble grape of Sicily, the red grape. And the Etna DOC, one of the requirements is that the vineyards can go up to 1,500 meters on the slopes of Etna. Well, Carlo Farini, being the adventurer, he went to 3,000 meters. So they didn't know what they were going to get. So he couldn't put Etna Rosso on his bottles. He said, that's okay. Put Sicilia IGT, because this is for all Sicily. He started, and he put the bush vines, which grow near the beach where it's windy and stuff like that, or wherever it's windy. But he put the bush vines up in the lava. He started with like 2 hectares up there, just buying patches as he could. So his first wine came out 2016, okay? And it was limited production. Robert Parker tasted it. He said, this is going to be the future of Sicily and stuff. This is the 2000. Now, I got 2 bottles left of the 2016. I'm saving those, okay? But this 2018 was rated 96 points by Robert Parker.
Wow.
Galoni gave it 94 plus. Okay, and now you're going to your volcanic wine thing. I want you and George. I'm giving you this bottle. I was going to open it, but I want you and George to taste it. I've had the 16, and I bought it from David Mayone at Vino Italiano.
Yes.
You know,
Good
'cause
place
they
to
say-
go to buy Italian wine, by the way.
Because they say every wine has a story, and if you read about Carlo Farini, he doesn't want to be he only produces 1,000 cases of his Brunello, and he says, because I don't want to take away from the winemakers who work so hard around me. He said, so he just wants to be small, unique, and it's hard to get his wines. This is why when I was able to get a Carlo Forini
And you
wine,
knew I was going to the volcanic wine.
that's right.
Company.
So yes, no, you.
But if you think about it, Jim, first of all, the label itself kind of looks like the area that is planted.
Yes,
in
that's
Etna.
Mount Etna. And Giotto evidently is a man
Beautiful.
holding up. He's holding up the world. So that is he works with a local artist. I forgot her name, but she's world famous in Italy and Europe and stuff. So that's supposed to be the this Sicily. That's supposed to be the man, and he's holding up.
Oh my gosh,
the world
beautiful.
and stuff. So, but
Well,
I want you.
Norello Mascalese. Here I go.
So that is your bottle, which was a 2018.
Thank you.
And it might still be a little young, but you can check on that.
Well,
because the 16 is drinking
we don't
fabulous.
we don't buy green bananas anymore, do we?
I know.
Okay, well, first of all, if you think about it, Etna's erupting all the time. These people talk about living on the edge. And if anybody out there wants to do a Googleable experience, type in Mount Etna wine images, and you'll see these wines growing in the black volcanic soils. Norello Mascalese is the new, I will treasure this.
Okay, I appreciate
Norello
that.
Mascalese is the new it grape. It is rivaling Nebbiolo, which is what makes Barolo. So if any of your listeners like if you like Barolo, if you like these lighter styles, Norello Mascalese is the name of the red grape.
In the Sicilians, when I read up on
my God,
this,
a treasure.
when I read up on this, I mean, they drink this red wine with seafood. Okay, I mean, you could also do it with stews and meats and pasta stuff, but it's relish. The grape is their grape, and of course they got great white wines too in Sicily. But
yes, but the volcanic wine, the white wine, is called Caricante.
Caricante.
So if you love that idea of salt, grit, and power, get volcanic wines like Norello Mascalese. I will treasure this. These individuals who are on Etna are really a wild bunch.
Well, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
So, Mike, any questions for Joanne at all?
I'm all ears.
Now, I just wanted to show you one other wine. Do you want to taste a little? It's a different wine because I know you have to fly. You have to fly to New York today. But...
Well, I'm driving, but I'm not driving. So it's the Breakfast of Champions.
Okay, so.
This is my breakfast.
Have you ever heard of Long Shadows in Washington State?
No, but I love walking.
Alan Shoup just died. Did you ever have Alan Shoup? He was the one who started St. Michel Wineries.
Oh, really?
And then he
Okay.
left there. He was the CEO after they built that up. He started his own vintner project, the Long Shadows in Walla Walla. And he acquired the vineyards, but he wanted to bring in 6 of the top winemakers in the world to show them the potential of Washington State and what it could produce in the Columbia Valley, Yakima Valley, and stuff. So he'd bring in Randy Dunn.
Wow.
He'd bring in the Folinari that did this for the Italians. And he's got some great winemakers. They still do it with Gilles Nicole. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's still the director of operations because they put out Chester Kidder. They do a lot of Bordeaux blends.
Yes.
Pirouette, Pedestal, and Merlot is one of the.
And people want to only do Napa Valley red blends, which are lovely but expensive. The Washington State red blends are, well, this will be fun. They're fantastic.
So why I picked this one out is because he always said, Alan Shoup and Jill, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Jill Nicole, that they could grow Sangiovese in Washington State. So this is a Sangiovese-based wine with Cabernet Sauvignon and Syrah.
Wow. So it's like a super Tuscan from Washington.
Yes. And it's never received anything less than 92 points.
Wow.
And the one we're going to try is 95 points.
All right.
Galoni.
And it is Sangiovese, Cabernet Sauvignon,
So we're trying the
And Syrah, oh my
we're
gosh.
doing the 2019 because that just came out. I just received that.
Jim, the alcohol is 15.1%.
Oh, yeah. That's why we just had a
I am
little
only,
taste.
I am not going to
Just gonna
swallow.
have a no,
I got to
just a-
get back town.
And
I got to drive.
I've been a
And
big
it's,
fan.
what is it, 9:30?
9:30, yeah. So Mike and I drink the whole bottle for this show. So I just want you to. So this is the show. Joanna, she's an expert in this, and I love Sangiovese. And when I first tasted this wine, I've been an allocation member for about 8 years now for Long Shadows, and I just love their wines. Feather being their Cabernet, it's one of the best. But their Bordeaux wines, Pirouette, Chester Kidder, those are all Bordeaux style. Because Alan Shoup was a great fan of Bordeaux, and so let's.
Well,
just, can you can smell.
Well, I can smell it, but one thing when I teach my classes, people usually chug down wines without really thinking about what it looks like. It's a multi-sensory experience. So I take a moment to look at the color, which is like a beautiful ruby ring, really beautiful.
And that tells us the youth, the freshness.
Yep.
You know,
Yep. Okay, what year are we in here?
2019.
Okay.
still a little young. But
Okay. I ask my students to pick out one fruit flavor. If they pick out lemon with a red wine, they're wrong. If they pick cherries with a white wine, they're wrong. But smelling this wine, you put your nose in it, and it's those dark cherries that are in chocolates, like those Morellino cherries.
Oh, I just had to swallow. I already had my breakfast at Champions. I had a little oatmeal this morning.
Wow. Okay. So this wine has a lot of richness as I take it in my mouth and I'm swallowing it. It's so flavorful. And people talk about the tannins in a wine, the dryness, and those tannins are kind of, I liken them to fabrics. Some of those tannins can be really rough and coarse and drying, and sometimes it's almost like you're coating your mouth with velvet.
Very elegant.
Very elegant, smooth. I wish I had the world's best homemade spaghetti and meatballs. That would be pretty amazing. Lovely wine. Washington State.
Washington State. So it goes to show you,
Wow.
if you have the right conditions, and what if you look at the latitude of Washington State, I think they said it was on the same level as Bordeaux, the
Yes.
Walla Walla and
Yes.
stuff. So Bordeaux, the king of where they make Cabernet Merlot, top Cabernet and Merlot, Syrah. So you look at this. If you got the right conditions, and you've got a good patient winemaker. It's fascinating to see because now California they're even making Sangiovese.
You know, I've always been, I like the grapes where they come from, like Nebbiolo in Piemonte.
Piemonte, yes.
Like Sangiovese in Tuscany or some other, it's grown throughout Italy. But I must say, this is the joy of Sangiovese with the cherries.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit thicker because of the Cab and the Syrah. This is a lovely dinner wine.
Well, it does. It's a low production, as you can see. What is it? 2,000 cases they
Very
produce.
small.
So anyway, just the point is, wine is an adventure. You drink what you like, but you go out and explore, and you find that. So, but once again, we're going to have you on again, Joanne. Talk about
My
your
pleasure.
exploits, your favorite places you visited and stuff. You can give us a little exercise on volcanic wines when you come back. So,
And Bordeaux.
and
I
Bordeaux.
also teach about Bordeaux, so we have to cover France and Italy.
So J. Ross Wine, you can look it up on the internet. The Commonwealth Wine School. Look it up and see. Oh, it's got a vibrant website, fascinating things. And you know what? If you really want to get into wine, but just enjoy the experience, you'd want to take a class with Joanne Ross, like I did.
Jim.
Well, until we meet again,
Cheers.
may the wine be with you.
Sante.
Son.